Hello, family. Welcome to JFK Today, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I'm your host, Janaya Future Khan, championper and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. This is all about the debate. I am here in the middle of the night. It's really just 8. It's fine. But I'm here because I just finished watching the debate and I wanted to make sure that you got it fresh off the press. It was a wild ride. I don't know how many of you watched it, so you'll enjoy this recap if you didn't, and you will enjoy it even more if you did. I'll just say this. Let me just say real quick, I looked real close at Trump's ear. I'm like, is there a nip there? Like, is something missing? Evander Holyfield still is missing a piece of his ear, thanks to Mike Tyson. It looked perfectly fine. His ear was fully intact, okay? Fully intact. So if you heard the episode before, you know that we kind of talked about the game plan and how it would be great if Kamala Harris did not come out with centrist talking points. We'll get to that later. I'll just say this. If I had to be like, who won? Kamala Harris won. She won the night. She kept Donald Trump on the back foot. This guy cannot resist a rub. Anybody who gets under his skin, who rattles him, who nettles him or whatever, he didn't let a single thing go. That being said, right, like Kamala Harris, went and shook his hand or whatever, and then the whole debate started. And one of the things I want to point out and give a shout out to, because we talk about wins and losses, here's one of the wins of the night. ABC's live fact checking. Well done. Well done. Lindsay and David were like, you're not getting away with shit. Every time that Donald Trump said some wild shit, they caught his ass immediately. Donald Trump said, they're killing babies. They're killing babies 9 months. They're killing babies 9 months. They're killing babies after they're born. Lindsay Davis immediately jumped in, the moderator, right? Lindsay Davis said, there's no state where it's legal to kill a baby after they're born. To which Trump just closed his mouth. Another thing that Donald Trump said, where I'm like, ABC's totally winning this, was Donald Trump claimed that the migrant crime wave, the immigrant crime wave, which is a thing that they're trying to start, kind of like Fetch in Mean Girls, which I'm realizing that if Regina had never had that moment where she kind of grew into a different person, she is who Donald Trump is. They're actually the same person. That's what I realized. And he's just trying to get this whole immigrant crime thing working the way that Fetch couldn't work with old girl. So he said, they're doing all this crime and they're coming here and they're bringing their crime and they're eating pets. They're eating cats and dogs and there's dead cats that they're carrying around. And then David Muir, who it was the other moderator, said, there's no evidence of dog or cat or pet eating anywhere. Trump then said, crime is up everywhere across the nation. Crime is the worst it's ever been. And David said the FBI actually says that crime is down. So in terms of who won the night outside of Kamala Harris, I have to say ABC's fact-checking team, kudos to you, my friends. Lindsay and David went after him. I will say this, though. I did find that there is a disparity, and I was watching this with KR, my friend, and we were watching this thing, and KR was like, they are unmuting his mic more. So Donald Trump won, I think, the mic battle, right? The mic mutes. There was a disparity. I started to really pay attention, and he would talk and his mic wouldn't be totally muted. But then when Kamala Harris tried to jump in once or twice, they were like, nah, you did just fine. And in terms of attacking, there was a disparity there as well. Harris, out of all the time that she spoke entirely for about 37 minutes. She attacked him directly for about 17 of those minutes. No, 37 of those minutes, sorry. And Donald Trump went after her more on character. But let me tell you something, Harris won on the policy thing. She went after him on policy. I think Donald Trump's character speaks for itself. But where Kamala Harris did not shine was when she was she did mention the most lethal military force in the world, which is its own thing. But the whole fracking comment, so Trump says she doesn't care about fracking. She's not about fracking. And she's like, I love fracking. She didn't say that literally, but she said the equivalent. And I was like, what? I'm sure that the centrists were like, yay. And the conservative moderates were like, yay. And then Mother Earth was like, And I had to do a lot of research on fracking. And look, in terms of leftist groups, it's not our favorite thing. We don't we'll be like climate change. We don't really know a lot about fracking. I want this to change for us, but we're much more involved in identity politics than we are, policies and climate change, et cetera. But fracking is one of those things where it's just like, I care about it. It's not a hill that I'm going to die on. And then I realized that if we don't care about it, it is the hill we're going to die on. It's literally the hill that we'll all die on. So it's a bit of a problem that we're all just like, yeah, fracking good. Not literally all of us, of course. Most of us know that it's disgusting and awful, but it is weird. It is weird to hear this woman be like, I'm going to champion this. You're not going to catch me on that. Anyway, whatever. Let me just do a quick recap of how the debate went, though, because I just wanted to shout out some of those wins. But if you didn't listen, you're not going to. That's totally fine. It sort of went. They started out with the economy and their policies around that. Then they moved into abortion, and then they moved into immigration, border security, and then January 6th, and then, of course, Israel Hamas. And I'm like, are we still using that Israel Hamas framing? I didn't know that we were. Anyway, in terms of the economy, I would say that it was a bit neck and neck. I want to give the edge to Kamala Harris. Okay, here's my beef. Here's my one beef. So Barack Obama actually was shit in his first debate. He was he sucked. And then he went back and he was like Bernard Hopkins, who lost his first fight and then went away for 2 years and then never lost a fight again for his entire career. That's what Barack Obama did for his speeches. He crushed. Kamala Harris did a really solid job opening up with the corporate tax cuts that Donald Trump offers and the billionaire tax breaks. And she really started to talk about what an opportunity economy could look like. I would have loved if she could have talked more about the struggle of what it feels like to work several jobs and not make ends meet, and how her plans actually address that. It did come in a bit later. It wasn't as emotive as I would like. And I think that her prosecutor style lends to, I think, kind of like a 15,000 feet above lens, whereas Barack Obama, and I promise you, I'm not comparing them because they're both black, even though I wish she was a little bit like Lady Obama. I'm not. It actually is like just the gift of gab, and I can't cite Joe Biden because, well, we all know what happened to the gab there. But I will say this. When she hit him, right, with because Trump jumped in and immediately started attacking immigrants and immigrant criminals, like that weird fake news shit. Like he started talking about Venezuelan gangs, the things that we debunked days ago, and he's talking about them as fact. She didn't take the bait. She actually completely ignored it because he said, the Democrats, they have the worst economy ever. The economy is so terrible. And Kamala actually came in and was like, oh, you want to talk about how we made the economy terrible? And then she ethered it. She's like, let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Shit him with the worst unemployment rate since the Great Depression, one of the worst public health crises, et cetera. And then she used this talking point, which I actually don't like. You're going to hear the same tired playbook that Donald Trump has, and da-da-da-da. And then she she references Project 2025, okay? So, I do think she edged him out in that section. It wasn't my favorite. And then she hit him with the, he's interested in Project 2025. And he said, no, I'm not. And my favorite part, though, was he's like, I have a plan. And then she said, 60 Nobel laureates said Donald Trump's plan would increase inflation. This guy only looks out for himself, and he spends more time defending himself than working for the American people. And then Trump's only response was I have no inflation. And then my favorite part is, she adopted my philosophy. He said that and then immediately followed up with, I should have sent her a MAGA hat, and then immediately followed up with, she's a Marxist. That's actually how that happened. She took my policies and my philosophies. I should have sent her a hat because she was acting like me so much. And also she's a Marxist, which was one of my favorite lines, because then he also later said, I love this line. He goes, Kamala hates Israel. Israel wouldn't exist if she becomes president. But in her own way, she also hates Arabs. That honestly is what, like, I might start saying that. I might be like, should I have a sandwich? But in my own way, I also hate Arabs. What the, what? He just talks. That was one of my favorite immediate contradictions that Donald Trump got. So what about abortion? Right? Because we know Kamala Harris has some kind of economic plan where she's going to create 3 million new homes, and she's going to have, bring those interest rates down, incentivize people in owning home ownership. We're going to talk about that. And basically said, this is what Donald Trump's policies have done, and I can prove that. Meanwhile, one of the great things about being the new guy is that nobody knows what you're going to do. Nobody knows what you're capable of. You have to prove to them that you have an idea and a vision, and it's easier to be the sitting incumbent, but it's harder when you're not, and you have to prove that you have a plan that could actually work when your plan literally didn't work the last time. So she edged him out on that one. On abortion, well, I mean, we don't really need to get into that because we all know that she ethered his ass there as well. But what he did very well in that moment, though, because again, Kamala's got this new energy and this newness. So the biggest attack that you could give against Kamala Harris, outside of, I guess, calling her a Marxist, which is weird, is to say that she's just Biden. She is Joe Biden. She just moves like Biden. She talks like Biden. She acts like Biden. I'm going to spare you too much on this. I'll just say this, like, she won, but a big reason why she won was because it was so emotive and it was so gruesome, what it looks like to not have full abortion rights and full abortion care. She talked about women bleeding out in parking lots and 12-year-old survivors of incest who are forced to carry a child. And, to me, that was probably her most profound, powerful talking point because it was something that so clearly impacted her. Trump's only talking point in that entire area was, for 52 years, this issue has torn the country apart. I'm like, no, it hasn't. Actually, and I wish that Kamala Harris quoted and cited the popular vote here, which is that the vast majority of people across the country want abortion. It is largely a bipartisan issue. It's a bunch of weird theocratic freaks that don't. They want to eliminate abortion because of their religion and their weirdness. So I wish that she had come out swinging a little bit harder on that. There were several moments where I wish Kamala Harris did better. But anyway, on the immigration border security thing, I mean, we already know. It's lies. It's the gangs. It's people who are coming after us. Here's what's kind of weird about that. Remember how we talked about how Kamala Harris kind of sounds like, and all the Biden administration and everybody else, that kind of sound like right-wing losers when they're talking about immigration? She didn't deny. So, I mean, this is the Colorado thing. These are fake stories. On one hand, I'm like, okay, maybe she didn't acknowledge it on purpose, but I guess because they know he's going to come down on crime so hard, and because there's hysteria when it comes to this border and these imagined issues, like she referenced her work as a prosecutor. So she said, I'm the only one who's prosecuted, anyone, these transnational gangs and transnational crime. And I'm like, how about the fact that we right-size the issue? Let's right-size the issue. It's not as real as people make it out to be. And it's also a manufactured crisis, not the crime for the actual border. And it's because of how, honestly, the West foreign policy is just disrupting and shitting on everybody in the world. And then he brought up the dog and cat eating thing again. What's going on? And then he said, they don't believe that across the Marxists and the Democrats. And then Kamala hits him back with 200 Republicans report me. And I'm like, how about we, not rely on immigrant crime to shore up votes? How about we not play that game? How about we actually just run on strong leftist policies and principles? How about we run on the fact that immigrants are being used as a red herring so that we aren't actually looking at billionaires and corporations that are creating wealth disparities in the country? How about the fact that we talk about immigrants and including like There's this whole story about 20,000 Haitians in Ohio. That town was dead. That town was absolutely dead. And the immigrant population that came in there, largely Haitian, actually reignited and reanimated the entire town. It's now like on the track to be healthy and booming. And the locals love it. How about that? But we're not getting those stories. And I would have loved if Kamala Harris had come out kind of swinging at that and said, hey, this sucks. But what she did do was say, pretty ironic that you're talking about all these crimes considering you're like low-key a criminal. And y'all know how I feel about this. But what she did say, instead of focusing on him being a criminal, just the fact that he's committed crimes. But I don't know. I wasn't that impressed. January 6th came out. And he basically was like, I feel bad for these people because they were treated very badly, and that's why. And then he immediately talks about the border again. Kamala Harris talked about being at the Capitol. And, that a former president in history who also incited a mob was indicted and impeached for exactly the same reason, and yet Donald Trump wasn't. And I was like, okay. This is my biggest my biggest pet peeve with Kamala Harris in this moment, right? When the January 6th thing came up and Donald Trump basically minimized the fact that he incited a rabid racist mob to storm the Capitol in the hopes of inciting a coup, because he refuses to this day to acknowledge that the election was fair and just and not stolen. Instead of saying what needed to be said, Kamala Harris referenced things like the rule of law and the sanctity of democracy. You know what would have been great in that moment was the fact that Donald Trump is a snake oil salesman that exploits the pain of everyday people across the country who don't understand why their lives are so incredibly hard. That's what could have been massive in that moment. The other massive thing that needed to happen and didn't was a strong leftist stance. And we talked about this, like what happens when you run on centrist, moderate things. I want to have so many jokes. For you. I want to be upset and have made so many funny lines, but I can't because I didn't have time to do that. And I feel so psychotic because it was so funny on its own, but they're playing with our lives. So it's hysterical and also hysterical. Does that make sense? Here's one of my favorite lines, though, of Donald Trump, because this is so funny. So they talked about, because they moved immediately into foreign policy, and he goes, and the Israel-Hamas war, which, again, is not a real talking point. And that's the biggest loss. Here are the two, we'll get into the biggest losers of the night. And, of course, it's always us, like the people who have to live under these whatever. But anyway, this is Trump. He said all this about the leader of the Taliban. He's like, his name is Abdul. I know Abdul. I said, Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, we have problems. Abdul said, why do you have a picture of my house? I said, don't worry about that. And I'm like, that's a literal quote from Donald Trump when they asked the questions about the way that America exited Afghanistan. And I have been laughing about that since it happened. Because, of course, when he's talking about a picture of the house, Abdul was like, bro, there's a drone in front of my house. Why do you have a drone in front of my house? Maybe don't. And he was like, well, you know why it's there? You got to do what I'm telling you to do. Otherwise, China. Trump also, no one will say anything. And Trump will be like, I love Putin. We know, nigga. We know you love Putin. Dictators love you. You love dictators. Kamala Harris came in swinging, actually, when she said, they know dictators love you because they know they can control you. You can be controlled with flattery and flowers. And I was like, I wanted her to be like flatulence too. I don't know why, but I really wanted that to come out. But here's where Kamala lost completely. She had some wins and she definitely won the fight overall, but she slipped on the canvas with this one unprompted. When she opened up with, they said, ABC asked, right? They said, Kamala, you have said that Israel has a right to defend itself about 9 months ago. And you also said it matters how. Now, after 40 to 41,000 people, Palestinians, are dead, and ceasefire talks are at a stalemate, what will you do? And she immediately opened up with October 7th. And and then moved into the right to defend, and then the need for a ceasefire and a two-state solution, which is that part is a newer stance. I think if Kamala Harris did believe that before, this is the first time she's bringing it up on stage. And I do have to name the fact that the way that October 7th is treated, it's not even with any concern for people who were murdered that day. It's become a de facto talking point to delegitimize the Palestinian struggle and the Palestinian strife. And that to me is disrespectful across the board. It diminishes the death of the people that day. It diminishes why they died, because there's a much longer history there. And it minimizes the reality that 40,000 Palestinians have been murdered. I was so frustrated, and it made me realize something, and I have been talking about this, and put on your tin hats for this one. What does Israel have on America? I understand that it's an alliance, but Netanyahu hates Kamala Harris. Netanyahu wants Donald Trump to win. Netanyahu constantly undermines America, undermines American journalists, has literally facilitated the murder of American journalists. Like, AIPAC has more influence on Congress than any other foreign entity. And I'm like I said, I sound like I'm a right-wing nut when I say that. And I understand the alliance. Again, I don't agree with any of these things, but you all know it's my job to understand things and my job to know things. And I get the alliance. I get that it is the UK, and it's the UK, the US, and Israel versus China, Iran, and Russia. But it still does not explain why Democrats and Republicans alike are bootlickers for Netanyahu. I don't understand it. There's something here that I'm going to have to like read more Chomsky and fucking Nader and maybe have conversations with them, because there's something that I don't understand about this. I cannot wrap my head around it, because Kamala Harris could have appealed to centrists and moderates and conservative moderates without opening up her talking point with October 7th. I personally don't understand it. We're so past that. Netanyahu isn't even in favor in Israel anymore. The UK has put a partial limit on the arms that and like if you actually look at the numbers, it's very minimal. It has no impact. But what they are waiting for and what the world is waiting for is for America to take a stance on that, because the second that America does, Israel has to. They have to submit on some level. They have no military force without American dollars and American arms. What the fuck do they have? Maybe I'm not asking the right question. I don't know. But, she went in and said blah, blah, blah. And, in America, when Ukraine came up and Russia and how they would, deal with that, Trump was like, if I was president, it never would have started. It never would have started. And that's where he said the whole Kamala hates Israel and also Arabs. But, she immediately answered that question with, we're America and we defend, XYZ. We defend these kinds of people. We, it's our job. We defend Ukraine. And I was like, why doesn't that apply to Palestinians? Like, you want to talk about Trump contradicting himself in a singular soundbite. Kamala maybe created some space between it, but my God. Anyway, I'm just, I guess I'll just end it with the fact that, Kamala, she said that she's Joe Biden, and Kamala's best point was she said, I am not Joe Biden. I'm not Donald Trump. I represent a new leadership in this country, right? And I offer up a vision instead of just disparaging America and Americans. And, I'm going to help people pursue the American dream, and I'm going to give money to small businesses. I'm going to give $6,000 for families. I'm going to offer down payment assistance for first-time homeowners, and I'm going to expand, our affordable health care acts and everything else. And look, all of this is true, but new leadership means new leadership. New leadership means moving away from the Biden administration, and every indicator, every poll and every indicator is saying that this centrism that's trying to walk the line, it does not work. You want to be a new leader, support these social leftist values and separate yourself from Joe Biden's legacy by taking a stance on Israel and by coming out swinging for the actual beliefs that you claim to have. I will say this, since this debate happened or during it, Taylor Swift openly endorsed Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. So the Swifties might save the day. We all know that Donald Trump has been trying to engage these weird kids who are accidental or intentional bigots in the manosphere who are red-pilled and weird. They won there. He's winning in that category, but I don't know that lends the votes. But I will tell you that if Taylor Swift is telling people to vote, they're probably going to vote because, I mean, you can't talk about that girl at all. Look, that's the debate. I mean, I want to have something profound. I want to say that I saw something amazing, but, you know, this is a huge shift since Biden's disastrous showing. That matters. I had a good time watching Kamala Harris. If they were fencers, she poked his ass a bunch of times, looked like a pincushion by the end of it. It was more even than when I started, but Kamala Harris won the day. She won the day. She outlined a vision of freedom, a vision of the future for the country. I'll end on this. I'll just say this. There's something really disastrous about the fact that everything that Trump offers is, he says that we're a country in decline. Everybody makes fun of us, and actually it's like, no, people are making fun of you. But they use fear, and they use this idea that we're in decline, and we're in decline because of immigrants, and we're in decline because of black people, we're in decline because of Jews, we're in decline because of Arabs and Muslims, we're in decline. We're in decline because of late stage capitalism. If we're in decline for anything, the issue is always capitalism. The issue is always billionaires. I mean, Elon Musk is the first to be on track to be a trillionaire by 2027, and he's only the first. I will have more jokes. I ran over here to get here and record this, but I think that this is a win. It's a win. I gotta count this as a win, and I don't necessarily think it was ever going to lead to more votes, but it's a win. It's a win. I don't know, you guys. I feel so weird about this. I'm like, while I'm saying it's a win, I'm like, we got to figure out a strategy around Kamala Harris to push her on this Israel shit because it's getting out of control. Anyway, you know what? I trust you and you trust me. I don't know how to make this funnier right now. I'm still like processing all of this information, but I'm so glad to just be in this shit with you. And she also hates Arabs. So, but in her own way, she also hates Arabs. She just in her own way. Yeah, this is what we got. Why don't we just shift to the question? I'm going to have much more to say about this. We'll be unpacking this forever. But the truth is, I think we know everything we need to know. We got what we're going to get. I want more and I want better. But if that's going to be our racehorse, well, then we got to be the jockey spurring her on in the right direction. Anyway, and I'm a little guy. I'm so little that every relationship I've been in has been long distance because bitches just be taller than me. I'm a little guy. I'm a little bitch. Anyway, why don't we hit the question of the day because I'm out of control right now.
Hi, this is Camille. I have a question. If you could bring anyone onto the podcast, who would it be and why?
Ooh, good question and good timing. We are actually when we hit the 5 times a week, there's going to be a slew of people coming in, so I'm going to be able to talk to everybody I want to. But I would love to talk to Kamala Harris right now. Like, girl, I'd love to have a conversation with you about what is going on. Like, what's in the black box? Like, what's the secret? I need to know. Does Israel have something on America? And what's the tea? Because we're just all here. Look, y'all. Look, I haven't eaten anything all day today. And I didn't feel very nourished off of this like fucking debate. I didn't. But it was a good, strong showing. And I think we all know how awful it feels when we don't have that. And we did not have that with Biden. But the wave is done. Now we have some policies. I actually like some of Kamala Harris's economic positioning. I think the YIMBY people did a very good job pushing her on housing, but I want to push her on Israel, and I want us to push her on Israel. And I think that any journalist worth their, worth their weight in paper, I don't know. We have questions, and we demand answers, and I can't see any more babies blown to smithereens. I just can't. And I back everything that she has this, on abortion and everything else. I understand the fight, but we got to fight on both fronts, and we are capable, and we can. And I feel very strongly about this. Kamala Harris is paying attention. That's the big difference. And she represents a new kind of leadership, and our job is to make sure that actually holds true. I am dedicated to that fight. I know you are. I am thrilled to actually just have been. I'm like, we missed the DNC. We gotta just run, and But the truth is, I'm not Kamala Harris's champion. I'm yours. Okay, so I'm gonna come out swinging for us and for the things that we believe, and we got to push her on that. So with that, why don't we cue that end music, because I'm just not rational at this point. I'm just yapping. So just want to say thank you so much for listening to JFK Today, y'all. It means the world to me. This show really is a labor of love. New episodes drop 4 times a week. We're available everywhere podcasts are streaming. Go ahead and drop us a voice note question to jfktodayshow@gmail.com. Shout out to KR, Carolyn, the JFK team, and shout out to you, the listeners who make it all possible. Peace.